145 days on the run. Derrick Groves finally captured in Atlanta. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. The night air was thick with humidity and tension. New Orleans slept uneasily. Behind the crumbling walls of Orleans Parish Jail, something was about to erupt. It started small, a whisper in the dark. A plan passed from bunk to bunk. A rumor that freedom was just one gate away. Derrick Groves sat on the edge of his cot, eyes fixed on the flickering light above. He'd been locked up for 6 months on armed robbery charges. He wasn't supposed to get out anytime soon. But tonight wasn't about supposed to. It was about survival, and he had nothing left to lose. The hallway outside his cell was quiet, except for the distant hum of guards talking near the control room. He could hear laughter, keys jangling, boots scraping. He checked the clock on the wall, 2:37 a.m., right on time. A faint click echoed down the corridor. Then another, the sound of locks turning. Derrick froze. Then a whisper, "It's go time." The first cell door slid open. Then another, and another. One by one, 10 inmates stepped into the hallway, their faces pale under the buzzing fluorescent lights. Some were killers, some were thieves, all were desperate. And in the middle of them, Derrick Groves. Quiet, focused, the one everyone followed. "Stick to the plan," he muttered. "No noise, no panic." The group moved like shadows, every step calculated. They'd studied the guard rotations for weeks. They knew which cameras were broken, which gates had blind spots. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. When they reached the laundry corridor, Derrick's heart pounded so loud he could hear it in his ears. The air smelled like bleach and sweat. He pressed his hand against the metal door leading to the yard. Cold, locked. "Come on," he whispered. The man beside him, Reggie, pulled a stolen keycard from his waistband. He swiped. Nothing. He swiped again. A red light blinked. Still locked. Someone cursed under their breath. Then Derrick stepped forward. "Move." He pulled a piece of wire from his shoe, bent it, and jammed it into the lock. He'd learned to pick locks years ago, before the arrests, before the chaos. One click, then another. The door opened. Cold night air rushed in like freedom itself. For the first time in months, Derrick felt the sky endless, wide, alive. He breathed in deep. "We're out," Reggie whispered, but Derrick shook his head. Not yet, because escaping the jail wasn't the hard part. Staying gone was. They ran across the yard, ducking behind dumpsters and fences. In the distance, a siren wailed. The city lights shimmered beyond the walls like a different world, a place where nobody knew their names. They reached the far fence, 20 feet high, topped with razor wire. The last barrier. Reggie boosted Derrick up. The wire tore at his hands as he climbed, blood streaking the metal. Pain shot through his fingers, but he didn't stop. He reached the top, swung his leg over, and dropped down the other side, landing hard on the dirt. He looked up, the others were following. 10 men, 10 fugitives. Somewhere an alarm blared. Then the floodlights exploded to life, sweeping across the yard. "Go!" Derrick yelled. They scattered into the night. By dawn, the city was crawling with cops. Helicopters thundered overhead. Roadblocks sprang up on every exit. 10 inmates on the loose. The news anchors couldn't believe it. The warden looked sick. 10 men escaped from Orleans Parish Jail overnight, the reporter said. Authorities describe it as one of the largest jailbreaks in recent history. But while the city panicked, Derrick Groves was already miles away. He'd stolen a car, an old blue Dodge with half a tank of gas, and driven until the sun came up. His hands still shook from the adrenaline. He could smell blood on his palms. He didn't care. He was free. He pulled off the road near a swamp outside Baton Rouge. The engine hissed as it cooled. Birds called from the trees. For the first time, silence. He stepped out of the car and walked to the water's edge. Mosquitoes buzzed in the air. He splashed his face with the cold, muddy water, stared at his reflection. He looked like a ghost. Pale, eyes sunken, beard grown wild. Freedom didn't look like the movies. It looked like this tired, bleeding, hunted. But Derrick wasn't thinking about the danger. He was thinking about what came next. Behind him, the radio in the car crackled with breaking news. Authorities say the fugitives may be traveling north toward Mississippi or Alabama. One inmate, Derrick Groves, is considered the most dangerous of the group. He turned up the volume. Groves was serving time for armed robbery, but has suspected ties to multiple violent crimes in Louisiana. Police warn he may be armed and dangerous. He smirked. They always say that. Then he shut the door and started driving again. By the second night, half the group had been caught. 2 men tried to steal food from a gas station. One was shot. Another was found hiding in a shed. Derrick stayed low. He stole clothes, changed cars, slept in abandoned buildings. He knew how cops thought when they'd search, where they'd stop. He'd lived on the streets long enough to understand one rule: don't stay still. He kept moving. New Orleans to Jackson. Jackson to Birmingham. Every mile was a heartbeat. Every sunrise a gamble. He was alive, but every siren in the distance made his pulse spike. Then came the first close call. A patrol car spotted him outside a diner in Montgomery. The cop looked twice, maybe recognized him from the photo. Derrick didn't wait. He bolted across the parking lot, ducked behind a dumpster, and disappeared down an alley. The cop yelled, "Stop!" A gunshot cracked through the air. Glass shattered above Derrick's head. He didn't stop running. Not until his lungs burned and his vision blurred. He collapsed behind an old warehouse, gasping for air. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking his clothes, washing away the dirt and blood. 145 days, that's how long he'd survive like this. But right now, he didn't know that. He only knew he had to keep moving. He looked out at the endless stretch of highway glowing faintly under the storm clouds. Freedom was out there, but so was everyone looking for him. And Derrick Groves was about to learn. Freedom always comes with a price. The morning after the escape, New Orleans woke up to chaos. News alerts buzzed on phones. Police scanners screamed. 10 inmates gone, vanished in the dark. Helicopters circled above the city. The sound echoed through the streets like a warning. Every major highway, every bus station, every gas stop locked down. Police cars lined the roads like dominoes. Blue and red lights painted the skyline. A swarm of officers fanned out, guns drawn, radios hissing. The city wasn't safe anymore. That's what people whispered. If 10 men could walk out of jail, what else could happen? Inside the Orleans Parish Command Center, chaos had a rhythm of its own. Screens glowed with maps of Louisiana. Pins marked potential hideouts, known associates, relatives, and old addresses. Detectives barked orders into radios. Coffee cups piled up on desks. At the center of it all stood Detective Carla Mendez. Sharp eyes, steady hands, the kind of cop who'd seen too much to ever flinch. She stared at the photo on the board: Derrick Groves. 35, brown eyes, tattoo of a cross on his neck. Wanted for armed robbery, assault, and now escape. She tapped her pen against the photo. "He's not like the others," she said quietly. "He plans. He waits. He watches." Her partner, Detective Reggie Nolan, looked up. "You think he's still in the city?" She shook her head. "No, he's too smart for that." Meanwhile, miles away, Derrick was behind the wheel of a stolen pickup, driving through the back roads of Mississippi. The sun was low, burning orange behind the trees. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since the night before the escape. But he didn't dare stop. Every mile he drove, the radio screamed his name. Authorities have launched a massive manhunt for Derrick Groves and 9 other fugitives who escaped from Orleans Parish Jail early Monday morning. He turned it off. Silence filled the truck. He liked silence. It meant nobody was close. He reached a rundown gas station just off Highway 49. No cameras, no cars. Perfect. He walked inside, hood up, head low. The clerk, a young guy, maybe 19, barely looked up. "Pump or cash?" "Cash," Derrick said. His voice was low, rough. He dropped a few crumpled bills on the counter. The kid turned to the register. That's when Derrick saw it. A small TV mounted in the corner. The news was on. His face filled the screen. Police described Groves as extremely dangerous. The clerk froze. Then his eyes darted to Derrick. Everything stopped. For a second, just the hum of the cooler filled the air. Then Derrick smiled. "Keep the change," he said softly, and walked out. The kid didn't move. Not until the door slammed. Then he grabbed the phone. Within minutes, 2 squad cars tore down the highway. But Derrick was already gone. He'd learned something from that moment. The world was smaller now. Every face was a threat. Every stranger could end him. So he disappeared again. He ditched the truck behind an abandoned barn, wiped the steering wheel, and took off on foot through the woods. Branches snapped under his boots. Mosquitoes buzzed in his ears. He didn't stop. Not once. He walked until night fell, until the forest swallowed him whole. By the second day, the FBI joined the hunt. News headlines exploded. Massive search for escaped inmates. Fugitive mastermind still at large. Carla Mendez stood in front of a board covered in photos, maps, and red string. She rubbed her temples. Everywhere they looked, nothing. Then her phone buzzed. "Got a tip," the voice said. "Someone matching Groves' description seen near Hattiesburg." She grabbed her coat. "Let's move." The drive to Mississippi was long and tense. Carla watched the trees blur by. Somewhere out there, Derrick Groves was breathing the same air, walking the same roads. She'd studied his record. Foster homes, juvenile detention, petty theft, then armed robbery at 23. A life built on running. But this time, she promised herself, he wouldn't run far enough. Derrick reached a small town called Petal, a quiet place tucked behind pine trees and forgotten gas stations. He broke into an old trailer on the edge of town, the kind nobody checked on. Inside, it smelled like mold and dust. He found a blanket, a can of beans, and a photo of a family on the wall. He stared at it for a long time. A man, a woman, 2 kids. They looked happy, normal. Something twisted inside him. He wondered what it would feel like to live a life where nobody hunted you. But that thought passed fast. Hope was dangerous. He heated the beans over a candle and ate in silence. Every bite tasted like fear. The next morning, he heard voices outside. 2 men. Neighbors, maybe. "Cops been asking around," one said. "They say that convict might be hiding around here." "Hell," the other laughed. "If he shows up, I'll shoot him myself." Derrick froze. He couldn't risk it. He grabbed his bag and slipped out the back before dawn. By the time the sun rose, he was gone again. A ghost moving through the woods. At the FBI field office, Carla spread out new reports. 7 caught, she said. 3 still out there. Reggie pointed at a file. This one, Derrick Groves, keeps moving north. Every tip places him closer to Atlanta. Carla nodded slowly. That's where he's headed. Reggie frowned. Atlanta? Why there? She stared at his photo. Because that's where his mother lives. Derrick hadn't seen his mother in years. Not since she'd kicked him out for stealing her car. He told himself he didn't care. But deep down, he did. He remembered her voice. Soft. Tired. "Derrick, you're gonna end up dead if you don't stop." He'd laughed back then. Now, her words echoed in his head as he crossed the Alabama line. The road stretched endless before him. Rain poured down. He walked for miles, soaked, freezing, but still alive. Every step took him closer to Atlanta, and closer to the end. By day 10, he found work on a construction site under a fake name. Cash only. No ID. Just long hours, dirt, and quiet. The foreman didn't ask questions. That was good. But Derrick could feel the walls closing in. His photo was on every TV, every billboard at truck stops, every gas station window. $25. 000 reward, Derrick Groves. He kept his head down, didn't talk to anyone, didn't smile. But people notice fear, and Derrick had plenty. One night, as he left the site, a car pulled up. 2 men inside, unmarked, government. They didn't say a word, just stared. Then the driver rolled down his window and said quietly, "Evening, Derrick." His stomach dropped. He ran. Bullets shattered the silence. He dove behind a dumpster, heart pounding. A shot grazed his arm, hot pain ripped through his skin. He scrambled over a fence, cut through an alley, and disappeared into the night. He ran until the world blurred, until his breath came in ragged gasps, until he found himself standing on a bridge, staring down at the water below. His blood dripped onto the railing. His reflection stared back, broken, hunted, tired. He whispered, "I'm not going back." Then he turned and vanished into the city. By week 3, the story had become national. Where is Derrick Groves? The escape that humiliated New Orleans. FBI offers $50,000 reward. Carla watched the news and clenched her fists. They were closing in. Every tip, every sighting, every lead pointed to Atlanta. They checked bus stations, cheap motels, abandoned buildings. But he was always one step ahead. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Atlanta didn't notice when Derrick Groves arrived. Cities never do. They swallow people whole, especially the ones running from something. He stepped off the bus just after dawn. Cold air, gray sky, the kind of morning where the city feels half asleep, half dangerous. He wore a faded hoodie, a baseball cap, and a limp that made him look older than he was. The wound on his arm still burned, but he didn't have time to heal. He had to disappear. Downtown was a maze. Buses, trucks, sirens, street vendors yelling over engines. No one looked at anyone for more than a second. It was perfect. He walked fast, hands deep in his pockets. Every corner had a camera. Every store had a mirror. Every glance felt like a spotlight. He ducked into a coffee shop. The air smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. He sat in the corner, back to the wall, watched people come and go. He envied them, the man reading the paper, the woman laughing into her phone. Normal lives. Lives that didn't run on fear. He sipped his coffee, scanning the TV above the counter. His face flashed again. Day 17 of the Derrick Groves manhunt. FBI confirms fugitive may have fled to Georgia. He froze. A man at the counter turned, eyes lingering on him for half a second too long. Derrick dropped his cup, coffee spilling across the table, and walked out fast. A few blocks away, he stopped to breathe. His heart was racing. Every muscle in his body screamed run. But he couldn't keep running forever. He needed shelter, a place the police wouldn't look. That's when he remembered the underground, the network of tunnels and old stations beneath the city. He'd heard about them years ago in jail from an inmate who'd lived on the streets. Down there, the man had said, "You can vanish." Night fell. Rain hammered the streets. Derrick slipped into an alley behind a shuttered diner, found a metal grate, and pried it open. Cold air rushed up from below. He climbed down into darkness. The tunnels smelled of rust and old water. Dripping pipes echoed in the distance. He walked carefully, flashlight flickering. Graffiti covered the walls. Names, dates, warnings, and then voices, low, echoing, human. He followed the sound until he reached a chamber lit by candles. A small group of people sat around a fire barrel, homeless men and women, faces hardened by the streets. One of them looked up. "You lost." Derrick hesitated. "Just need a place to rest." The man studied him. "Police looking for you?" Derrick's jaw tightened. "Not if they can't find me." A moment of silence. Then the man nodded toward the corner. "You can stay, but no trouble." Derrick sat. The warmth of the fire touched his face for the first time in days. He closed his eyes. He felt almost safe. Above ground, the hunt was tightening. Detective Carla Mendez stood in the FBI's Atlanta office, staring at a digital map dotted with red markers. Every tip, every sighting, every false lead. Reggie leaned over her shoulder. "We've got surveillance footage from a coffee shop. Matches his height, build, even the limp." Carla's pulse quickened. "Run facial recognition." The system scanned. Matched. Confirmed. She exhaled sharply. "He's here." Morning came cold and wet. Derrick woke to the sound of footsteps above him. The city alive again. He stretched his sore arm and looked around. The people from last night were gone. Just ashes and smoke. He found an old mirror wedged into the wall. Looked at himself. He barely recognized the man staring back. Sunken eyes, cracked lips, fear carved deep into his skin. He whispered, "You look like hell." Then he smiled, because hell was exactly where he belonged. He climbed back up into daylight, hood pulled low. He needed food, money, plan. He found a pawn shop near the bus terminal. Inside, it smelled like metal and dust. "What you got?" the owner asked. Derrick placed a gold chain on the counter. It wasn't his. It was from the motel he'd broken into 2 nights earlier. The owner squinted. $50. "Make it 100, Derrick said. The man frowned. 50. Derrick leaned closer. 80. The owner studied him, then shrugged. Fine. Derrick walked out with a pocket full of cash and a knot of guilt in his gut. He told himself it didn't matter. Survival never did. Back at the command center, Carla watched the clock. It had been 145 days since the escape. 145 days since Derrick Groves vanished into the dark. The media was relentless. Every headline screamed failure. Where is he now? FBI loses track again. America's most elusive fugitive. Carla's reputation was on the line. She couldn't afford another miss. Then finally a break. A 911 call from a pawn shop owner near the Atlanta bus terminal. A guy came in with a gold chain. Looked just like that fugitive on TV. Limped. Had a bandage on his arm. Carla's eyes lit up. Get me that footage. That night, Derrick walked through the city, rain soaking his clothes. He didn't care anymore. He'd stopped feeling human weeks ago. Every siren made him flinch. Every reflection made him question if it was over. He wandered to a park and sat on a bench. The city glowed in the distance, alive and oblivious. He thought about his mother again, what she'd say if she saw him now. He pulled out a burner phone he'd bought for cash. Scrolled through contacts, none saved, all memory. He dialed one number, paused, then hung up. He couldn't do it. Not yet. At 3 a.m., a black SUV rolled to a stop outside a diner near the interstate. Carla stepped out, rain slicking her jacket. She met with 2 FBI agents. We tracked his phone signal, one said. Used a burner, pinged near Piedmont Park. Then it went dark. Carla nodded. He's close. Reggie joined her, clutching a photo. Groves has nowhere left to go. If he's calling someone, it's family. She exhaled slowly. Then we find them before he does. Derrick walked until sunrise, then found a payphone near an abandoned warehouse. He dropped a coin and dialed again. This time, he didn't hang up. A tired voice answered. Hello. He froze, then whispered, Mama. The line went silent. Then a sob. Derrick? Lord, is that you? Tears stung his eyes. Yeah, Ma. It's me. Where are you? The police bin. Don't say it, he interrupted. I needed to hear your voice. Her breath hitched. Baby, you gotta turn yourself in. You can't live like this. He looked at the sunrise bleeding over the skyline. I can't go back. You know what they'll do to me. They'll kill you out here too, she said softly. Please, Derrick, let them help. He hung up, stood there in silence. The city around him woke up, unaware of the man standing at its edge, broken and hunted. That call changed everything. Within an hour, the FBI traced the signal. Carla's team moved in fast. Get every unit in a 5-mile radius, she ordered. Groves is done running. They closed in on the industrial district, a maze of warehouses, train yards, and dirt roads. Perfect ground for ghosts. Helicopters circled. Floodlights cut through the dark. Dogs barked in the distance. Carla gripped her radio. Units 4 and 6, move in from the south. He's boxed in. Derrick felt it before he heard it. That vibration in the air, the hunt. He saw the lights, heard the engines. He knew it was over. He ducked into a warehouse, breath ragged. Footsteps echoed outside. "Groves, come out with your hands up." He pressed his back against the wall. Sweat poured down his face. His mind raced. Atlanta, Georgia, a city alive with sound. Traffic humming, neon signs flickering, voices echoing in the night. But beneath the noise, something darker stirred. For 145 days, Derrick Groves had been a ghost. A man who had escaped one of the most secure jails in Louisiana. A man who had slipped through every trap, every manhunt, every tip. Until now, it started with a call. A woman's voice, nervous, whispering. She told the U.S. Marshals that she'd seen someone. Someone who looked too much like the man on the wanted poster. Same eyes, same beard, same walk. She said he was working odd jobs around the outskirts of Atlanta. Moving furniture, painting houses, keeping quiet. It wasn't the first call they'd received. But something about this one felt real. Within hours, an investigative team gathered in a dimly lit command post outside the city. Photos of Derrick lined the walls. Maps covered in pins showed every place he'd been rumored to hide. Marshal Jonathan Miles stood at the front of the room, jaw clenched. He'd been hunting Groves since day one. "He's gotten too comfortable," Miles said. "That's when they make mistakes." In a rundown Atlanta neighborhood, Derrick Groves was living under a new name, Marcus Hall. He rented a small room above an auto repair shop. Cash only, no ID. He'd grown a beard, wore a baseball cap low over his face. Every morning, he'd grab a coffee from the gas station, head to work, and blend into the background. But even as he played the role of a quiet, hard-working man, he couldn't escape the paranoia. He avoided cameras. He crossed the street if a police car passed. He checked the locks twice, sometimes 3 times before sleeping. At night, the memories came back. The escape, the fear, the sound of sirens fading as he disappeared into the dark. He'd replay every decision that brought him here, the fight in prison, the plan, the betrayal, and the worst thought of all, what if they find me? By week 5 of the renewed search, the marshals had narrowed his possible location to a few square miles. They ran surveillance on local bus routes, checked abandoned warehouses, questioned anyone who might have hired day laborers. A small breakthrough came when a construction foreman mentioned a worker who never gave his real name. "Quiet guy," the foreman said. "Didn't talk much, worked hard, paid cash for everything. One day he just didn't show up." Miles leaned forward. "Did he leave anything behind?" The foreman handed him a crumpled receipt. It was for a used bike purchased 3 blocks away. That single piece of paper was enough. Investigators pulled traffic camera footage near the shop. And there he was, Derrick Groves, helmet on, bag slung across his back, riding off toward a quiet stretch of road in southeast Atlanta. The date? Just 3 days ago. Before dawn, unmarked SUVs fanned out through the neighborhood. Agents dressed in plain clothes positioned themselves at corners and alleys. A drone hovered silently above the street. Inside the command van, Miles watched the live feed. "Stay sharp," he ordered. "We get one shot at this." At 8:37 a.m., a figure emerged from the back of the auto repair shop. Ball cap, backpack, same build, same walk. It was him. Groves looked around, cautious, deliberate. Then he started walking down the block. 2 agents followed on foot. A third shadowed him from across the street. Groves turned into a small market, bought a coffee, and came back out. That's when he noticed it, a car idling too long. A man pretending to read a newspaper. Something inside him snapped. He dropped the cup. He ran. The calm morning exploded into chaos. "He's running!" One of the agents shouted into the radio. Groves darted through alleys, vaulting over trash cans and fences. His shoes pounded the pavement. Dogs barked. Sirens wailed in the distance. He could hear footsteps behind him, getting closer. He turned down a narrow path between 2 buildings, thinking he'd lost them. But as he came out the other side, 2 SUVs blocked the exit. He froze. Miles stepped out of one of the vehicles, gun drawn but steady. "It's over, Derrick," he said. "Don't make it worse." Groves looked around. His breath came in sharp, desperate bursts. For a moment, it looked like he might surrender. Then he turned and ran again. Bullets didn't fly. The marshals chased on foot. Groves leaped onto a chain-link fence, pulling himself over the top and into a construction site. The sound of boots followed him. Shouts echoed through the half-built structure. "Stop! Hands in the air!" He ran up a flight of unfinished stairs, heart pounding like thunder. And that's when his luck ran out. At the top floor, there was nowhere left to go. Just open air and a drop 2 stories down. Miles stepped forward slowly. "Don't do it, Derrick." Groves raised his hands, trembling. Then, quietly, he said, "Guess this is it, huh?" When they cuffed him, Groves didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just stared out at the skyline, like he was watching his last bit of freedom fade away. At the command center, Miles exhaled for the first time in hours. 145 days, someone whispered. He almost made it half a year. Groves was transported under heavy security. No stops, no risks. Every mile back to Louisiana was a reminder that the story was finally ending. But not everyone was satisfied. Families of victims tied to Groves's earlier crimes were still waiting for justice. And now that he was caught, they wanted answers, all of them. Back in New Orleans, the city buzzed with the news. Fugitive Derrick Groves captured in Atlanta after 145 days on the run. Every station, every headline, people couldn't believe he'd managed to stay hidden for so long. Some even called him the Houdini of Louisiana. Others saw him for what he was, a dangerous man who'd finally been stopped. In interviews, Marshal Miles said something that stuck with viewers across the country. People think they can outrun justice, but justice doesn't stop running either. In the interrogation room, Groves sat across from 2 detectives. He didn't look angry or scared, just tired. They asked him about the escape, who helped him, where he went. He told them little, only that he'd stayed in abandoned motels, worked for cash, and kept his head down. Then one detective asked quietly, "Why come back to the city? Why Atlanta?" Groves hesitated. "My sister," he said finally. "She used to live here, before everything went bad." He looked down at his hands. "Guess I just wanted to be close to something that felt real again." For 145 days, Derrick Groves had lived as a free man. But freedom built on fear isn't freedom at all. He couldn't call family. He couldn't use his real name. He couldn't sleep without checking the door. Every face on the street looked like a threat. Every sound made him jump. In the end, he wasn't living, he was hiding. And hiding, no matter how long, always ends the same way. As the sun set over the Louisiana State Penitentiary, Groves stepped out of the transport van in shackles. Guards surrounded him. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions he didn't answer. Inside, the metal doors clanged shut behind him. The echo lingered, heavy, final. 145 days of running. 145 days of fear. All ending where it began. Miles stood at the gate, watching him disappear down the hall. For a moment, he felt no triumph, only relief. "Case closed," he said quietly. But even as he turned away, something in him knew. There would always be another Derrick Groves. The cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions into the humid Louisiana air. "Derrick, do you regret it? Where were you hiding? Did anyone help you escape?" He didn't answer. He didn't even blink. The man who once slipped through steel bars and state lines now stood silent in shackles. Eyes hollow, face weathered from months of running. 145 days of fear. 145 days of pretending. 145 days of borrowed freedom over. The gates of the Louisiana State Penitentiary opened, swallowing Derrick Groves whole. The sound of the heavy metal doors closing behind him echoed like a thunderclap. Clang. A sound he'd dreamed about. A sound he'd hoped he'd never hear again. As he was led through the corridors, prisoners pressed against their cell bars, shouting, "Yo, Groves, they finally got you. Did you miss us, brother?" Some laughed. Others just stared. To them, he wasn't a man. He was a legend that fell. He was the guy who did what nobody else had done. Escape. And for a while, he made the world believe he'd gotten away with it. But legends don't last. They crumble the moment the lights come on. Hours later, in a small, sterile room, Derrick sat across from two investigators. One of them, Detective Barnes, tapped a pen against the table. "You've got one chance to talk, Derrick. Tell us what happened after you escaped." He looked at the detective. His voice was low, rough. "I ran." Barnes frowned. "We know that part. Tell us where." Derrick leaned back in his chair. For the first time in months, he looked calm. "You think it matters?" he asked. Every day was the same. Different town, different name, same fear. He paused. "I stopped living the night I walked out that gate." The other detective scribbled something in his notebook. "Who helped you?" Derrick didn't answer. He just smiled. A faint, broken thing. "Let's just say, I didn't get this far on my own." News of his capture spread fast. Faster than his escape ever did. Escaped inmate caught after 145 days on the run. From Louisiana to Atlanta. The fugitive who fooled everyone. TV anchors replayed footage of his arrest on loop. Social media buzzed with speculation. Some people called him a genius. Others called him a coward. But everyone had an opinion. And in homes across America, the question whispered again and again. How did he do it? A podcaster summed it up perfectly. He wasn't just running from the law. He was running from himself. Weeks later, during a federal hearing, new information surfaced. Groves hadn't escaped alone. Someone had slipped him a key. Someone had turned off a security camera. But who? Theories exploded. Was it a guard? A friend on the outside? A paid insider with connections? When pressed, Derrick refused to say a word. He simply told the courtroom, "Doesn't matter now. You got me." The judge stared at him coldly. "You had 145 days to prove you were more than a criminal. You chose to prove the opposite." Groves lowered his head. For the first time, he looked small. Prison was different now. He wasn't just another inmate. He was the escapee. Guards watched him more closely. Other prisoners whispered when he walked by. Some respected him. Others wanted to test him. One night, in the mess hall, another inmate slid a tray next to his. "So what was it like?" the man asked quietly. "Being out there?" Derrick didn't look up. "Loud," he said. "Too loud. Every sound felt like a siren." The inmate nodded slowly. "Worth it?" Derrick took a long breath. "No," he whispered. "Not for a second." A month after his return, Derrick got an unexpected visitor. It was his sister, Marie, the same woman he'd once driven across state lines to see after years apart. She walked into the visitation room, tears already in her eyes. He hadn't seen her in over 6 years. "Derrick," she said softly. He didn't meet her gaze. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you let me help?" He stared at the floor. "I didn't want to ruin your life too." "You already did," she whispered. There was a long silence. Then she stood up and turned to leave. Just before she walked out, he said quietly, "I just wanted to see you. That's all." She stopped for a moment, then kept walking. The door shut with a soft click. And for the first time since his capture, Derrick Groves cried. Nights in prison stretched long. Endless hours. Endless thoughts. He replayed the escape in his mind over and over. The clang of the gate, the rush of air, the sound of freedom. But the memory always ended the same way, with the chase, the cuffs, the van. He'd traded one prison for another. The walls outside were invisible, but they were still walls. And now, back in the cell, he realized something painful. Freedom wasn't just about escaping. It was about living without fear. He never had that. Not for one day. Marshal Jonathan Miles came to see him one last time. The same man who'd hunted him for nearly half a year. Groves looked up from his bunk as Miles entered. "You came to gloat?" he asked. Miles shook his head. "No. I came to tell you something." He sat down across from the bars. "You had everyone fooled for a while," Miles said. "But you know what gave you away?" Groves frowned. "What?" "Pattern," Miles said. You might have changed names, towns, jobs, but your habits didn't. You always bought coffee at the same time, always walked the same route. That's what brought us to you." Groves smirked. "Guess I wasn't as smart as I thought." Miles stood to leave, but before he walked away, he said, "You're lucky. Most men like you don't live long enough to get caught." Groves said nothing, but his eyes, they told a story of exhaustion, of a man who finally understood the weight of his own choices. Later that night, Derrick wrote something on a piece of torn paper. He didn't have anyone to send it to. He just wrote it for himself. 145 days of running. 145 days of fear. 145 days of pretending to be someone else. Freedom felt like air at first until I realized I was suffocating. Maybe this is where I belong. Not because I want to be here, but because I can't be out there. He folded the note and hid it in the wall. No one ever found it. Months passed. The world moved on. New stories filled the headlines. But for those who chased him and those who watched, Derrick Groves became a reminder that no one truly escapes forever. That freedom without peace is just another kind of prison. That the choices we make always find their way back. One of the marshals later said in an interview, "You can run for days. You can run for months. But eventually time catches you. It always does." Years later, Groves was transferred to a smaller facility. Older, grayer, quieter. He spent his days reading, writing, sometimes staring at the sky through the narrow window of his cell. No one talked about him anymore. No one visited. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, he could hear the faint sound of a train passing in the distance. And for a brief second, his mind would drift to the open road, the cool air, the sound of footsteps fading into freedom. Then the moment would pass. The cell would feel smaller again. He'd lie back, close his eyes, and whisper the same words every night. "I was free for a while." Derrick Groves' story became one of the most talked about manhunts in recent U.S. history. A tale of pride, desperation, and the illusion of escape. For 145 days, he lived outside the law. But what he discovered was more powerful than any sentence a judge could hand down. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.